What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. It's Thursday, so you know who's with me, the human wet blanket, Levin Black. Hi, Levin.
Hey, what time is it?
It's 1 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, okay. So this is when we're supposed to be live, correct?
That's right. That's why we're live.
Not noon.
Nope, not noon Eastern.
How dare you mess with our loyal listeners and viewers?
I do apologize. Michael, watching on YouTube, says, what if breaks at work were scheduled just to tune in and you don't show up? Frustrating. I apologize. I put the wrong time in the StreamYard thing. That's my bad. That's my bad. You know, look, the 49ers had negative 6 yards in the first quarter last week. They rebounded. So give me a chance to bounce back here, and hopefully we do just that. Welcome, everybody. If you're new to the show, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are live just about every single weekday here on the channel. We have 49ers in 5, a 5-minute update every morning for you on the channel as well. I promise you, you will not find better 49ers coverage anywhere. And oh boy, Levin, what a week. This is one of those golden weeks in the season when your team wins a big game, and not just wins a big game. When you destroy your opponent.
That's a pretty good troll there by, I'm going to guess, Juan Chozilla. Sorry, I'm sure I just butchered that, but he said Rob is a system content creator. Totally agree, because it's all about his co-hosts. It's not him. It's all co-host related.
Yeah, elevated by everybody around me.
It's the supporting cast. It's all the yak you get out of our comments.
Right. See, I just tee you up and then you give all the actual content. I need to have longer questions, longer answers. Apparently that's the deal. Do you want to start there? Do you want to start with the Brock Purdy stuff?
It doesn't matter. We're going to be there one way or another, whether it's this week or next week or the week after, I think. So
this would be my complaint about the whole discourse and the whole conversation. Apparently now, what you need to do to be a good quarterback and be an MVP is you need to have a cannon for an arm. You need to play with a bunch of guys that stink. You need to only throw the ball 20 yards down the field. And when those guys catch it, you need them to immediately fall down. Then if you get all of those things, then you can be the MVP, apparently, to a lot of people, because that's their biggest argument against Brock Purdy, that he's got too many good people around him, that he doesn't throw deep enough, and then it's all yards after the catch. And it drives me crazy because it's all wrong. It's all bogus.
Yeah, I mean, you have Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison. Ever heard of those guys? Dallas Clark. Ever heard of that guy? You got Tom Brady. He played with Rob Gronkowski. Like, he might be the one that played with the least supporting cast.
Yeah.
Because Wes Welker won't be a Hall of Famer. Julian Edelman will not be a Hall of Famer. Just because he has playoff stats doesn't mean he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But almost every single MVP had a receiving option that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Will Debo? Will Ayuk? I don't know. At this point with their careers, it's unlikely, because you got to be crazy productive to be Hall of Famers. So what Hall of Famers is Brock Purdy currently playing with? Probably Trent Williams, and a very small outside chance, I would argue, George Kittle. But Kittle's got to get to like 10,000 career receiving yards with the way tight ends have done it in recent years. I don't think he's just going to get there. His blocking will be valuable, but it won't be enough in an argument. But that's a different topic. The point is, every single quarterback, whether Kurt Warner winning MVPs with Hall of Fame wide receivers, or Peyton Manning, Tom Brady has a Hall of Fame tight end. Like, everybody has somebody that's ridiculously good. Devontae Adams for Aaron Rodgers, Julio Jones for Matt Ryan. Like, they all have ridiculously good supporting casts. That's part of what you have to have. And there's no better year to show that than this year, because look at the supporting cast Patrick Mahomes has and why he's not an MVP candidate. It's not because Patrick Mahomes is failing. It's because his wide receivers are so god-awful they're dropping the ball. Literally. So supporting cast is a requirement to even be in an MVP conversation.
I totally agree. Every MVP Brett Favre won, he had Mike Holmgren calling his plays, okay? Like, nobody seemed to care then. I just think it's really weird. And it's like stuff is just coming out that's not true. And for an example of this, look at this tweet from Nick Wagner, who covers the Niners for ESPN. Brock Purdy, 5th in completions of 10 or more air yards in the entire NFL. He's fourth in completions of 15 or more air yards. He's fifth in completions of 20 or more air yards, and he's 10th in completions of 30 or more air yards. So the idea that he is just a check down merchant, as some people like to say, is just flat out incorrect. It is not true. Yes, he did do more of that against the Eagles, but I believe that was a specific game plan. If you watch the other games he has had this year, as those stats bear out, you can see that he is throwing the ball deeper down the field. He's not just checking it down. Just because you do that one, against one particular opponent doesn't mean it represents what you've done the entire season.
And he's done this with very few passing attempts compared to other quarterbacks. If you were to adjust those statistics that you just showed to a rate stat, meaning how many times has he thrown 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus, compared to how many attempts he has overall, he jumps into the top 3 in 4 out of 5. Meaning when he is throwing, he is top 3 most likely to be going deep, throwing deeper down the field. So it's just, I guess, ignorant would be the nice way to say it for anybody making that argument. Like, you would hope they don't know the actual truth, so they would be ignorant. If it's somebody, hello, Stephen Ruiz of The Ringer, that is arguing it despite the statistics and he knows them, then it's just BS. And it's somebody being stubborn with their opinion because they were dead wrong. They came out hard against somebody that somebody proved them wrong and they're refusing to admit it, and shame on you. Like Stephen Ruiz, like his credibility to me has gone next to zero because he won't adjust. He won't change his opinion. He's being stubborn. And then this industry, that's like the death knell of your credibility. You cannot be stubborn with your opinions if your job is to create rankings of how good somebody is.
I think that Brock has gotten better at throwing down the field than he was last year. And I think that's kind of working against him because I think people saw him last year and they were like, he is just a check down merchant. We've seen this with Nick Mullins kind of a thing. And I think that was their initial impression of him. And look, he was 23-year-old rookie, third string quarterback coming in, trying to lead a Super Bowl team. He did, I think he was just trying to get through it, but he's better this year. He has grown this year. He is throwing the ball deeper down the field. He's having more success when he's throwing the ball deeper down the field. I think he's protecting the ball better than he did last year. I know the interception total was similar, but I think he's had fewer turnover-worthy plays this year than he did last year. He has grown in ways that you can see if you watch him, but I think the problem is first impressions never go away, right? And the first impression people had was that he was guilty of the things that they are accusing him of this year.
Yeah, but when your job is to create a list where you get rid of first impressions and you're not biased,
right?
Then you got to be willing to adjust. You got to adjust to what the reality is. I mean, he has 2 people that aren't even in the NFL ranked above Brock Purdy in terms of current best quarterbacks in the league. It's like they're not even in the league. How are they on this ranking? Like to put a rookie above what Purdy is doing is absolutely insane. And he has 2 of them. He has 2 rookies to be in Drake May and Caleb Williams ranked above Purdy.
Yeah. Now, look, if you want to say that you think somebody else is more valuable than Purdy and they should win the award, okay, that's fine. But you can't say he doesn't deserve the award because he's not throwing deep down the field and he's not elevating the people around him. Because he is, by the way. Go look at Brandon Ayuk's career before Brock Purdy and go look at George Kittle's career before Brock Purdy. They have become better players since he's been in the lineup. That is not an accident. So it frustrates me when people ignore the facts.
Yeah. And one of the facts that we learned this week, or I guess was illustrated in a way that really drove it home, came from Mike Sando at The Athletic, where he points out yak and that it's not making Brock Purdy great. It's part of the equation of any quarterback. But of the last 10 quarterbacks, they've averaged, I think it was 49% yak, and Brock Purdy's at like 49.5%. And last year's MVP got 54% of his passing yards from yak. So Brock Purdy's like right in line of what it takes to be an MVP. Now, you could argue to be an MVP, you have to have a little bit of an inflated yak year where you get a little bit of luck in yards after the catch, because that's what winning the MVP is. Everything comes up roses for you in that year. That's how you win an MVP. So, yes, he's higher than the average in the league, but only slightly. And that's why, like, anybody making the argument against Brock Purdy, the ones that you're hearing out there from both national and, non-national people, they're just lazy takes where they didn't bother to actually research. And that to me is a shame on you, because you're betraying the trust of the people that are actually driving your clicks and your views and why you get paid.
Now, you and I disagree, because you said on Twitter that you think Tyreek Hill should be the unanimous MVP, which I think
I didn't. Why are people saying that? It was Offensive Player of the Year.
No, I don't think so.
Akash's post was about Offensive Player of the Year.
Let's see. One is on pace to set an NFL record. The other isn't. Sorry, but Tyreek Hill should be the unanimous choice. Okay. Yeah, it looks like the post was about Offensive Player of the Year. All right. You know what? I didn't expand Akash's post, so I stand corrected.
Yeah. Somebody else commented that. I didn't realize that you also thought MVP, but somebody said, that wide receivers don't win MVP or whatever. And I was like, who's talking about MVP? It's Offensive Player of the Year. And that goes to wide receivers and running backs quite often, because it's basically a hat tip to, hey, you could have been MVP, but we only give it to quarterbacks most years. So that's what that award has become. And a wide receiver just won it last year in Justin Jefferson, because he had 1,800 plus yards and a bunch of catches. And guess what? Tyreek Hill is on pace to eclipse him in every single statistic: catches, yards, and he's already done it in touchdowns, because Justin Jefferson only had 8 receiving touchdowns last year. Tyreek Hill has 12. Now, this is a 49ers podcast, but the point of that is it's not Christian McCaffrey's award. Christian McCaffrey isn't going to set any records. He's going to probably get over 2,000 scrimmage yards, but that's nothing to write home about. That's normal in a given year. You had Josh Jacobs eclipse 2,000 scrimmage yards last year, and he didn't get Offensive Player of the Year over a wide receiver that's going to do worse than what Tyreek Hill is. So
let me ask you a question. When Calvin Johnson set the very record that Tyreek Hill is in the process of setting right now, was he the Offensive Player of the Year?
No clue.
He was not. He was not first. He was not second. He was not third. He was fourth in the Offensive Player of the Year voting. Now, he only had 5 touchdowns that year, which is obviously part of it. But you know who was the Offensive Player of the Year?
Give me a year. I can't remember what year he did that in. Was it 2009 he did that in?
All right. Well, now you're going to make me bring up the actual year. I don't know the year off the top of my head. It was, as I look it up right now,
I remember the year.
2012.
Really? He did it that late? 2012. So you're past LaDainian Tomlinson. You're into the Adrian Peterson years. So that would probably be Adrian Peterson.
Correct. Adrian Peterson was.
Is that the year he returned from ACL early and went for 2,000 yards?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So he ran for 2,000 yards. He ran for an NFL record number of yards rushing.
It wasn't an NFL record. It was 2,000, but it wasn't a single season rushing record. And by the way, he had 13 touchdowns that season. Christian McCaffrey already has 17 touchdowns this season, and is going to end up likely with more yards from scrimmage than Adrian Peterson did that year. I think the Offensive Player of the Year should be Christian McCaffrey, if not the MVP. What McCaffrey is doing, he's having the Marshall Faulk season that Marshall Faulk had with The Greatest Show on Turf, the year Marshall Faulk won the MVP. I think it should be McCaffrey, to be honest with you.
No, and he's not going to get to what Adrian Peterson had for scrimmage yards in that year. He's on pace for, I think, 2,053 scrimmage yards this year. It's under 2,100, that much I'm certain. That's what Christian McCaffrey is on pace for scrimmage, which is really, really good. But Adrian Peterson had almost 2,100 yards rushing alone in that season. He fell 8 yards shy of the NFL record of rushing and forgotten that he didn't quite get it. But Adrian Peterson had a couple hundred yards more scrimmage yards than Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson had a couple hundred more scrimmage yards than what Christian McCaffrey is on pace for. And I don't see Christian McCaffrey increasing his pace, because I think teams are just going to start. They're already starting. His 8 men in the box has risen in each of the last 3 games. He's up to 40% now, which leads the league by a wide margin, but it was in the low 30s going into the bye week.
I think he could produce, he could increase his output the rest of the year. They play some tomato cans down the stretch. We'll see. But how nice is it, Levin, that we are legitimately talking about not 1, but 2 potential candidates for MVP and or Offensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, that part's insane. That I'm really curious if there has ever been a year Well, now that I say that, I can think of probably a year that it happened. I was going to say a year where a running back and quarterback on the same team finished top 5 in MVP, which I think if you had voting right now would probably happen. You'd probably have Christian McCaffrey coming in somewhere around 5th because there would be some token votes going to a running back. And then you would have Tyreek Hill, and then you'd have 3 quarterbacks, probably in the top 5. I'm guessing when Marshall Faulk won it, Kurt Warner was also top 5. Be my guess, but I'm not sure on that.
No, he wasn't. The year Marshall Faulk won MVP, it was Faulk, McNabb, Eddie George, Rich Gannon, Ray Lewis, and Peyton Manning.
So that might be a first. We might see if both players keep it up, this might be the first year where you see top 5 finish from a running back and quarterback on the same team.
It is a beautiful thing. Yesterday, Kyle Shanahan was asked if this offense has the potential to be the greatest offense he's ever coached. Here's Kyle Shanahan yesterday.
It has the potential. I mean, and I know the best one was the one I was with in Atlanta in 2016, but I mean, we're doing pretty good like that team too, so it's got potential. I'll let you decide.
I think it could be. I think this offense, they had -6 yards last week in the first quarter against the Eagles, and they dropped 40. They had 462 yards in 3 quarters against the Eagles. So, yeah, this could easily be the best offense Kyle Shanahan has ever had. This could be one of the best offenses in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I think you could make an argument that it's more unstoppable than that Falcons team because the running back is a different class than what they had with Devontae Freeman that year. But in terms of being able to say that it's the best offense, I don't think they're going to reach that Falcons offense. I don't remember exactly where they rank all time, but they were in the running of scoring the most points all time, and they averaged almost 34 points per game. The Niners aren't even at 30. Like, it's a 4-point per game difference. It's more than 10% difference that Falcons scoring. Like, you're not going to get to that level.
I don't know. I think they might. You're playing the Seahawks. You're playing the Cardinals down the stretch. You're playing Washington Commanders. It's certainly possible. I mean, if these other teams start turning over the damn ball, let's be honest. I believe the highest scoring offense of all time is the Denver Broncos in 2013 with 606 points.
Yeah.
Holy hell, that's a lot of points.
And then I want to say it's the Vikings in 98 with Randy Moss's rookie year. And then I think it's the Falcons.
Nope. It's the 07 Patriots, 589, then the 2018 Chiefs, then the 2011 Packers, then the 2012 Patriots. The Vikings in 98 are after that. The Falcons in 2016 were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9th. 10th, I think, actually, 10th. So it is an elite offense by Kyle Shanahan. I think they're going to boat race the Seahawks this weekend. I talked to Seahawks radio analyst Steve Rabel for the Crossover podcast. The video is up now on the Gold Standard Network YouTube channel. Even he was basically saying it's going to be an uphill battle this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. The only way the Niners lose is if they allow it to happen. The Seahawks can't match up and beat the Niners if the Niners come in focused and actually are ready for this game. Now, if they're looking past it because they're starting to smell themselves again, or however you want to put it, like they were going into the bye week when they lost 3 straight, well, then, yeah, they could lose it. But that's on the Niners. The Niners remain focused. They not only win this game, but there's a very good chance they all but lock up the NFC West. Because if they win this game and the Rams lose to the Ravens, and the Ravens are coming off a bye week, then the best scenario, or the only scenario that the Niners could lose the NFC West, is if the Rams win out, the Niners lose out, and the Rams overtake them in NFC record. Because they would be 1-1 head-to-head. They would be equal in divisional records. Both would have, I think, 2 losses. And then you would have to have the Rams overtake them in the NFC conference record, which I believe they would if both teams lose out. But that would be literally the only scenario the Niners don't win, because they would have a 4-game lead with 4 games to go. The Seahawks would be out. The Seahawks would be eliminated. So they'd be 4 games down, and they lost both.
It's funny that you mentioned sort of the Niners feeling themselves a little bit back after the Dallas win. Kyle Shanahan was asked about that yesterday. Like, hey, last time you guys, dominated a big opponent like this, you sort of did that. Here was Kyle Shanahan's response.
Know from that experience how that felt, and I don't think that's why we played bad, but I don't think it helped us. And that's just, I mean, as Bobby T and my dad say, that's why people sell papers. I say that's why people try to get clicks, but everything's going to be extreme. I mean, you're going to be either really, really good or really, really bad, and that's just how it works, and that's what's great about our league, but that has nothing to do with us. And I mean, that game, I know the end result looked really good, but you guys saw it could go any way. I mean, they brought in a one score there in the third quarter after Dre got kicked out. There was easily could have been down 21-0 after the first quarter. There's a very fine line there between 2 to 5 plays, and it ends up looking like the game got out of hand. But it's very similar to the Thursday night game versus Seattle. That was a close game. Luckily, our defense stayed strong there in that third quarter rally. But that was right there, and just a couple plays, and then it doesn't look close, but they're always close.
Doesn't look close, but they're always close. That's a good line for division games, especially.
Yeah, I mean, what he said there is a bunch of hogwash.
What do you mean? I totally disagree.
He said that isn't on us. Yes, it is. Like, if you play poorly, it's on you. If you lose 3 straight, it's on you. Now, I know he's talking about media narrative that they like to say you either played terribly or you played crazy good. Well, no, if you lose 3 straight, you deserve criticism. Sorry. I don't care what team you are. I don't care if you've won 30 straight games and 2 Super Bowls and you're at the end of the season. If you lose 3 straight, your team lost focus. And he said that he doesn't think the team getting full of themselves had anything to do with it. Okay, well, your own players have said that it did.
Bosa said it.
So he's full of crap. That's what's going on there.
He's
full of it.
I thought you were talking about his explanation about how the final score looks like a blowout, but in reality, the games are closer. Because I agree with him on that point. Nicholas Parra says, if possible, will you both consider making it to a home playoff game? I work with the Rush Road Trips and welcome you to join. It's a great experience. I've never been a part of any of that. I would love to go to a home playoff game. The problem, honestly, for me is like, I want to do the show after the game, and I can't do the show after the game if I'm at the game.
I'll just say it right now. It is not possible for me this year because where I work is going through an expansion, and that new expansion is supposed to come online in January. So my January is pretty much going to be working every single day, probably 6 to 7 days a week. So I will not be available for any road trip in January. Now, our tentative date is be online and done with that January 26th. So I'm hopeful if a Super Bowl happens, a Vegas trip could happen. But that is something that I'll cross that road when we get there because it might be things got delayed as they often do in big projects like this. And I might end up having to walk a fine line and feel out my company in terms of me leaving for the Super Bowl if it's delayed.
Oh boy. Well, like you said, let's cross the bridge when we get to it. Sign me 29 on Twitch. Shout out to everybody watching on Twitch. I love you. Says Levin is extra wet blankety today. Yeah, Levin, take the stick out.
I actually got a blanket on because I'm down in my basement and it's cold in winter.
There you go. Shout out to Reynolds Mortgage and Real Estate, newest YouTube channel member. Thank you very, very much. If you want to become a YouTube channel member, please do. It's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, you get membership badges, you get priority comment response. And they also chimed in with a Niners comment. We love you, Reynolds Mortgage and Real Estate. Thank you very much.
Read it correctly. It's 999999999 Niners. Come on now.
Yeah, that was pleasant for everybody. Please keep doing that. But I do think that, oh boy. Okay, your wife has chimed in, says, bring Jim Harbaugh back. I miss watching him. I'll say this. Did you see Kyle have his Jim Harbaugh moment on Sunday? When Dre got kicked out of that game, Harbaugh was going nuts on the side.
There was no Sharpie. And that was part of the thing that my wife liked was the Sharpie and getting angry and throwing things and just flipping out and yelling all the time on the sideline. That made it something for somebody that didn't really care about the game. Yeah, enjoyable to watch.
That was probably the most animated I've ever seen Kyle Shanahan on the sideline. Yeah. He went absolutely apoplectic, and I totally get it because you have just this random dude on the sideline messing with players, and it was ridiculous. It never should have happened. It was utterly ridiculous. Dre's at fault, as I said. Most of the blame goes on him, but to have a just random guy making contact with players, you can't have it. And the league sent out a memo this week to all the teams basically saying, get your people under control. They can't do this. This is wrong. The league is still investigating whether or not they're actually going to do anything to Dom DeSandro.
They have to. You can't kick a photographer out for the rest of the season, revoke his sideline passes because a player went up to him and grabbed his phone and he dared smile about being involved in an unplanned, like both Tyreek Hill and the photographer and the NFL found, yes, we believe it was unplanned. The photographer had nothing to do with it. You took his credentials for the whole rest of the year to where Tyreek Hill said, I will pay his salary because the guy literally can't do his job for the rest of the year. But you're going to do nothing to somebody that actually physically got into it with a player? No.
I agree. I think they're going to do something, a fine or a suspension, something. And Kyle Shanahan was asked about this week, like, is this going to be a strategy that teams use? And he actually had a funny line. He said, you just wait till you see what we do, which is, to me, the biggest sign that things are going well for the 49ers, that Kyle Shanahan is actually telling a joke during a press conference.
Are you ready to fight? Because this comment's going to get us to fight.
I was just going to click on it. John Shoup says, I'm a fan of Levin's take, and to be fair, he lives in Pittsburgh. It's hard to be happy living there, but at least their pizza is better than that crap in Connecticut. Look, I am no Connecticut fan. I bag on Connecticut constantly, but Connecticut has the best pizza in the country and arguably the world. And this is not an opinion. It is fact. Go look it up.
It's not fact. It's always an opinion when it comes to that stuff.
You can look up any rankings that are ever done. Connecticut pizza is always at the top because it's great.
You cannot look up any rankings ever done. If you go to Chicago and look at a reviewer stuff, they will have a Chicago pizza #1. If you go to New York, it will be a New York place #1. Now, that Connecticut place you mentioned might be the most frequently cited, especially when you get to an unbiased source, but it's not every review ever done.
Telling you, man. Again, I'm no Connecticut fan, but we do have pizza. Anyway,
let's get no Connecticut fan, yet you refuse to leave it. Huh?
Yeah, I have friends and family here. You don't know what that's like having friends. So, doesn't matter to you where you live, but some of us have actual attachments to certain places.
Now, I will go back to that comment and say he's not wrong. It's hard to be happy this time of year in Pittsburgh. Like, people don't know. I didn't know before I moved. Pittsburgh has more overcast days and days with precipitation of some sort than Seattle.
Wow. How about that? All right.
Yes, winters are very long. It's sunny summers, and for about 6 straight months, it's like you don't see the sun.
Let's get to some 49er news.
Let's be talking about Pittsburgh. Jeez,
no, let's definitely not. We got a few things happen lately, Levin. Yeah. We'll start with the freshest one because that just happened a couple hours ago. Robbie Gould, Happy Trails, announces his retirement from the National Football League. And I've been saying it with Ryan Hensley. I was on with him. I was on with Steph Sanchez today. He has one of the iconic playoff moments, period. Not just 49ers playoff moments, period. His kick in the snow against the Packers is one of the greatest playoff kicks of all time.
49ers moment? Yeah, you can get there. It's up there, but no. Not of all time. Even with the 49ers, it's not #1 because you have the catch.
I'm saying kicks, playoff kicks of all time.
Playoff kicks, I guarantee you, if you took a poll that had like people from around the NFL, former players of all eras, it would not come in top 5. It's not one that resonated. It's a really skillful kick. It wasn't easy, but it is certainly not up there. Obviously, the snow kick that got the Patriots into the Super Bowl probably comes in at #1 in that.
Yeah.
And then after that, like, maybe it's more memorable than I think, but it's for sure not going to go to #1. And I don't think other fan bases remember it.
Well, they should, because it was damn difficult. It was below freezing. It was snowing, obviously, 41 yards, and Robbie Gould drills it. And he has one of the coolest things ever for a kicker. He can say from now until he leaves this planet, I never missed a single playoff kick in my career. And that is so awesome for him.
Yeah, he might make the Hall of Fame, which for kicking, it's hard to do because nobody wants to vote a kicker in. Let's just be honest. Like, it takes a lot to get in, and he doesn't have what every other kicker in the NFL has, which was, hey, at one point in time, I had the most points in NFL history. So he might not make it in, but I think he should be in. I think he's deserving.
Benjamin Bear says, love Robbie Gould, but now it's time to make new memories. Do you think this ends the whole call Robbie Gould if Jake Moody misses a kick thing?
It ends that, but if Jake Moody were to get dinged up, I think we know who's coming.
Oh, boy. Well,
yeah.
Congrats.
Put it that way. If it doesn't put to bed, Robbie Gould is retired for good. It is the Tom Brady situation. Well, if there's an injury.
Right. It's not like Robbie Gould is suddenly going to, gain 400 pounds in, the next.
It's not like Robbie Gould's going to go, oh, sure, I won't come try to get a Super Bowl ring with a Super Bowl contender that needs me now.
So congrats on a great career, Robbie. Thank you. I mean, he was, in my lifetime, the best kicker the 49ers have ever had. I think that's pretty clear. And yeah, congrats on a great career. Let's get to the other piece of news. The Ty Davis Price era is over, Levin. How are you coping?
I guess I'm used to it. I'm numb to it. It's to be expected. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. Stop letting Kyle Shanahan draft running backs. He lasted. He was gone before the end of his second year, which makes him the third one taken in the third round in the Kyle Shanahan year. To have 3 of those in, what is this, 8 seasons is insane.
So this graphic on the screen, if you're watching on the stream, is not every third round pick the 49ers have made, but these are the third round picks that have just whiffed completely. Starting with Jalen Hurd, and you could say, look, that wasn't an ability thing, it was an injury thing, but he was still picked in the third round, and he gave the team a grand total of 0 games. Trey Sermon in 2021 lasted 9 games. Danny Gray is the leader in the clubhouse at 13 games, and we don't know if he's ever going to see the field again, frankly. Ty Davis Price lasted 7. He's already gone, and Cam Lotze was picked this year, and he's on injured reserve. So that is a troubling and infamous list, Levin.
It is, but it's also third round, so it's not to be it's to be expected, I guess. Like, your third round picks aren't gonna get a bunch of playing time. I would say the games played is a little bit lower, but if you look at every third round pick and you put them together as a group since the 49ers took over, I would say they're probably right around league average to maybe a little above league average. So it is what it is. Now, running backs taken in the third round to be as bad as they were, that is different, because running backs, if you're drafting a running back in the top 3 to 4 rounds, they should get some play. And those 3 guys basically didn't play at all for the team.
Andre Garibay, YouTube channel member, says, another lesson for Kyle. Stop taking running backs and tight end in the third round. Let's get some O-line, guys. Yeah, God knows we could use a little offensive line help. Jedi says they have the running back room we want. Christian McCaffrey, Eli, J.O. Cook. What is J.O. Cook? I don't know what that is. Are you talking about Jordan Mason, I assume? Anyway, Kyle, you check. I think the Niners look at it as, if CMC went down and Elijah Mitchell went down and Jordan Mason went down, we'll just throw Debo back there. So we don't need Ty Davis Price, I think, is how the Niners look at it. Yeah. And they took the roster spot that TDP had and they gave it to Logan Ryan, 2-time Super Bowl champion safety. I love the addition. They're not asking him to be a starter and go play, 50 snaps a game. He's the cherry on top of the sundae. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's got that championship experience, which I think is something that the Niners could rely on if they go as far as we think they're going to go. And I love it. They just keep adding, Levin. They keep adding to the pile. They're not satisfied. You can never have enough good players, so bring it on.
So first off, the Logan Ryan thing, is it a needle mover? No, obviously not. But it is a quality signing this late into the game. Hopefully he never plays. That's the stance fans should have. That's the stance the 49ers should have. Hopefully he never plays. But if you get in a pinch, at least you got a 32-year-old veteran who has started basically 9 seasons worth of games. I think he has 121 starts in his career. He's had quite a few interceptions in his career. That's one of the hallmarks of his career. And he can play both safety, and he does have some experience playing corner. Whether he can do corner at age 32, I don't know. But it gives you versatility.
Yeah, he's going to be a safety.
the key though is if you're in a pinch in a game, it's good to have somebody that has versatility that you can bring in and have the ability to put in a couple different spots.
And last week, Tashawn Gibson went down and they had Isaiah Oliver in at safety. So clearly they needed a body. And I like that they went out and got a veteran, a guy that has Super Bowl experience. Do you know the member of the 49ers defense that has a Super Bowl ring? Not counting Logan Ryan.
It's definitely not a starter.
Chat, anybody in the chat want to throw something out there? It is a starter.
Is it a starter? Oh, Charvarius Ward?
Yes.
Duh.
Hey, shout out to Alberto Soto, who got it. Charvarius Ward, who won it in 2019 against the 49ers.
Yeah, that's why I said duh.
That stings. Stings to miss that one. I guess you're not a real fan.
Do you think he's ever come into the locker room wearing that one?
Good question. I don't know, but in the playoffs, he should. And Logan Ryan should be wearing them too. Remind everybody, keep the main thing the main thing. I would absolutely be on board with that. And speaking of that, as we go to this question from Jared Poulter, are we going to get Zach Ertz, another Super Bowl champion, Levin? He cleared waivers. Any team he can sign with any team he wants now. The Niners clearly have a need at tight end because Ross Dwelly's got the high ankle sprain, so he's going to be down for a few weeks. What do you think of adding Zach Ertz to the roster?
It'd be cool if they do, but I don't think he's a needle mover either at this point. The guy can't even average 9 yards of reception. Hasn't averaged 10 yards of reception in a couple of years now. He's not what he once was. Is he somebody that's a good depth piece? Absolutely. Is he willing to sign for cheap? I don't know that. And if he's not willing to sign for cheap, you don't sign him because he's not really that good anymore. It would be basically insurance for a Kittle injury, not so much to suddenly have two tight end sets and have that dominant formation that the 49ers used in the Harbaugh era. That's what you're not going to get. And I think most fans are thinking, ooh, we signed Ertz. We're getting that Ertz of 3-4 years ago. No, you're not. You're getting a guy that's pretty darn close to a shell of his former self.
You're not getting Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker, right? Yeah. That's not what it's going to be, which, by the way, just the fact that they had both of those guys at the same time is insane. But no, but he's still a good player. He can contribute in a limited role. And as I have been saying all morning, let's say, George Kittle gets hurt for a play, needs to come out, needs to get checked for a concussion, whatever the case may be. If it's, third and short and the Niners want to throw, I'd sure as hell feel better about Zach Ertz being on the receiving end of one of those passes than Braden Willis or Charlie Warner or whoever you want to throw out there for the Niners. And look, sometimes these games and these plays come down to one specific play in a game. So I'm all for it. Bring him in. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Throw him on the pile.
Yeah, if they can get him for the right price. Now, I would say the way the roster is right now, if George Kittle goes down, the offense changes because I don't think they're going to put another tight end and give him pass routes in any real significant way. I think it becomes, all right, we're keeping Juice on the field, and Juice will be that other receiving option that can stay in to block and then try to leak out.
Yep.
And that I think it fundamentally changes the offense. Whereas if you have Ertz, I don't know that necessarily happens. I think that might happen a little bit. Like there might be a couple of plays that maybe Ertz isn't going to be able to run the route that you want, and so they go to Juice. But for the most part, I think the offense would stay the same. You don't have to fundamentally change it, and that's what Ertz brings. So I don't think he's necessarily a needle mover when signed, but if Kittle goes down, he's a needle mover, and that would be the argument for signing him.
Waltony 101 watching on Twitch. Shout out to everybody on Twitch. Of course, has a smart question because the entire Twitch audience is very, very smart. Waltony 101 says, can he block? We know how Kyle Shanahan feels. No block, no rock is basically the philosophy there. He's not going to block as well as George Kittle, but can he block as well as Charlie Warner? I got to think it's pretty comparable, right?
Yeah, he was never the blocker that Gronk or Kittle. And those are your gold standards for blocking tight ends that can also be dominant in the receiving game. But he can block better than, say, Kelsey. He's a better blocker than Kelsey. I would say I'm not going to pretend I'm super knowledgeable in his blocking, but what I remember always reading about him was that he was an above average blocker for a tight end. And that's the type of thing that doesn't really go away as you age. The receiving part goes away, and
Yeah.
he's certainly diminished in that. But the blocking part, if you got the technique, you got the technique. And from what I remember, he was always considered, he's not a George Kittle level, but he's the next level down.
John Shoup has a really nice comment that I'm not going to read because you made a crack about Connecticut pizza. So I just want to throw that up there and then ignore it. We'll see if the Niners make a move. As soon as Kyle Shanahan said, I've always liked him, I was like, oh, okay, they're in on him. Because when Kyle says that, that's all it comes down to when it comes to free agent guys. So I imagine we should be hearing relatively soon. I mean, there's not that much time left in the season, and I'm sure Ertz wants to, get in there and get acclimated to everything. So we could hear maybe as soon as today.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't signed at this point. I'm surprised there hasn't at least been announces of visits happening. So it seems to me at this point that Ertz is not visiting teams. He's just going to talk to them, and then suddenly you'll hear, oh, Ertz is visiting the 49ers or the Eagles, and he signs when he visits the first one. I don't think he's going to have a round of visits because he would have already done it.
How do you watch that game on Sunday and be like, no, I'd rather go to Philly than San Francisco? Like, really?
I mean, Philly's probably home to him. Let's be honest.
Wow, but he's got college roots in the Bay Area. Don't forget. He and his wife, Julie, have Bay Area roots.
That is true.
It's going to be interesting to see where it comes down to. I saw this comment from Thomas Latrail watching on YouTube. Says, if we were to go after anyone, it should be Ndamukong Suh, especially since the Eric Armstead injury will probably linger. The Armstead thing is legit, Levin. That plantar fasciitis it's tricky. It can flare up at any time. I think we saw what Armstead looked like when that was an issue last year when he had 0 sacks in the regular season. So they need to sit him and they need to, get him right as fast as possible. And he's going to probably miss, obviously, I would think this week, Kyle said, and probably next week too.
Don't play him till Christmas. I mean, that's how I am. And if he's not fully healed, don't play him till the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
It's more important to have him healthy for the playoffs than it is to chase the number 1 seed and risk not having him on the playoffs. Because if you're not at your full strength come playoffs, what was the point? You need to be at your full strength come playoffs to win a Super Bowl.
And we have seen when this team is at full strength, they do not lose. Not only do they not lose, they boat race people. They absolutely dominate people. There's a really good tweet from Kyle Posey that I want to get to. But before we get to that, King says, why does Grant hate Brock Purdy with MVP talks? He's playing great. This team would look way different if Sam was there. I don't know why he says put him on another team and see how he does. Grant needs a head evaluation. He and I talked about that on yesterday's show. To me, it is not about, well, how would this guy do in this imaginary hypothetical situation? We got to judge these guys by the situation they're in and the team they're on and the people they have around him. And he and I just fundamentally disagreed about that for the whole show.
If you want the answer to the question that's posed there at the beginning, why does Grant hate Purdy with MVP talks? For the same reason Steven Ruiz does. Because they came out strong against them in the beginning and they don't want to admit they're wrong. It's stubbornness.
Yeah, we don't do that with Dak Prescott, right? Would Dak Prescott be good on the Bears? I mean, hell, in week 5, people were calling Dak Prescott trash. So I just don't like that sort of evaluation.
I think there was a little bit of that when Dak was younger. Because when he first came out, that offense was dominant. The offensive line was one of the best we've ever seen offensive lines. And there was quite a bit of, Dak can only succeed because he has Zeke in that offensive line. It's not him. I think that held up for 2 to 3 years until he suddenly had that 1 year where he broke out and had like 4,500 yards. So I think it's something that comes with when you're lower drafted quarterback that inherits a playoff team. It's a criticism that stays. My argument would be it stays with the people that are stubborn, and those people should be looking at history and learn that that's foolhardy to keep up.
Roadhog says, why is Purdy not comeback player of the year? Roadhog, I think you're forgetting that DeMar Hamlin literally died on the field and is back playing football this year.
Yeah, but he's not even getting talked about, and it's because he didn't miss a game. That's why. I don't disagree. I wish the NFL would come out and say the comeback player of the year is defined as, and then give us a definition. Because depending on who you talk to, the definition changes drastically. Some are you have to have a serious injury. Some are like Geno Smith. Oh, you can just suck for a long time and then suddenly be good. No, that's what breakout player of the year is. Your definition of comeback player of the year shouldn't be the same as breakout player of the year. But it is for a lot of people. Geno Smith literally won the award when it was just him breaking out finally and showing that he was actually halfway decent. So I wish they would define that award, because should Purdy be eligible? I fall in the middle on that. He didn't miss a game, but at the same time, he did have a serious injury. But at the same time, he didn't miss a game.
I don't think it matters. If you're coming back from injury, a significant injury, and an injury that only 2 other pro quarterbacks have ever had before, you have a legitimate shot. The problem is Damar Hamlin died on the field and came back to play football the next year. Like, that's the end of the argument.
I have seen some people not giving Damar Hamlin because he doesn't really play. So I think there will be other players that get votes.
I mean, that's insane. That's insane.
I think the award should be renamed the Damar Hamlin Award.
Yeah,
I would like to see that happen. Take a page out of college and name your awards after some all-time greats.
Well, that one, I think you could change it. That's what I would say. Let me get to the Kyle Posey tweet, because I teased it here. I love this tweet. I was not aware of this until Kyle threw it out there. The Niners, when Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuel start and finish the game, they are 16-0. Not only that, they've outscored opponents 529 to 239. 12 of those 16 wins have been by 13 or more points. And as Kyle writes, if what you're watching feels like something you haven't seen before, it's because you haven't. They are crushing people, Levin, in a way that we literally have not seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, I didn't know the second and third parts of that tweet. The first part I had forgotten, but I remember that being talked about in the playoffs last year, and just takes a couple seconds to go, oh, that's right. When they missed Deebo, they lost every game, so thus that stat would still be they're undefeated. Because I remember them talking about it in the playoffs last year. They were, the number I have stuck in my head is they were like 9-0 going into that Eagles game, where those 3 players, if they finished the game, they're 9-0, so to speak. And that ended up still being true because Deebo missed the losses this season. So
that's just an unreal statistic that they could be not only just good and winning, but winning by that much. It puts so much like pressure in my head. Like, they have to win the Super Bowl this year because they are so good. If you don't win the Super Bowl when you have this team doing this to people, you're never winning the Super Bowl. And, I hope they will. It looks like they're going to have as good a shot as anybody, but they still have to actually do it.
I've said multiple times this year, it's about legacy. If the Niners don't win the Super Bowl this year, 10 years from now, nobody will remember this team. Nobody will talk. The only way this team will get remembered if they don't win a Super Bowl as, oh, that was one of the best teams to never win it.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. There used to be an NFL Network show called The Missing Rings, and it was just a documentary about all the great teams that didn't win the Super Bowl. It was fantastic, by the way. And you don't want to end up in that pile for sure. And it looks like, they're going to have their say, but man, it does keep me up at night.
Look at the Eagles of the early 2000s. How often are they brought up? They're only brought up when somebody's talking about, oh, well, this team made it to a bunch of conference championships, but never won it. They're only brought up when people are talking about the current 49ers, or if they're talking about Andy Reid and how he finally got over the hump in Kansas City.
Or the Bills, because they not only went to 4 straight conference championship games, they won them all and went to 4 straight Super Bowls. And hopefully they're not in that group, like I said. King says, I need Levin and Grant show so Levin can hit him with the facts. Man can't let Grant go off in his La La Land thoughts of adding Brock Purdy to another team. You want to do a show with Grant?
I don't care.
We have in the past.
We have, yeah. I mean, it was 4 people, so it wasn't necessarily me versus Grant. But I told him my honest opinion of him in that show. That I think sometimes what he's saying just to get clicks. But I also think that he is the only person amongst the media with the 49ers that actually asks the tough questions. And I respect him due to that. But I do think that some of his takes are just takes because they'll get a reaction.
I agree.
I told it to him on camera. That was what, 1.5 years, 2 years ago?
I think so, yeah. Waltony 101 says, wasn't it just a few weeks ago people were saying trade Deebo before Ayuk? Not sure how easy a choice that is now.
It still is an easy choice.
I mean, Debo was incredible on Sunday. Clearly, 4 catches, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus he had a rushing touchdown. You don't get that Debo every single week.
That's the problem.
Look, he was extra motivated. Like he's a human being, right? Everybody has games that are going to mean more to them than other games. When he is motivated and set up like that, he is arguably the most dangerous weapon in the entire league. It's just the problem is he also has games where he's not as invested and he doesn't contribute that kind of production.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they can find a way to pay both and keep both. But if I have to pick one, I'm picking the one that opens the offense up. To me, Debo, does he bring something nobody else brings? Absolutely. Can you find other ways to get it done without him? Absolutely. Every single other team in the league does. If you take Ayuk out of this offense, you don't have that deep threat, and the defenses will cheat down and take away all kinds of other stuff. You won't have Christian McCaffrey being nearly as effective. You won't have Debo being able to do anything. We've seen it. We have seen that story. Before Ayuk broke out, this offense struggled to do anything because they couldn't take the top off the defense. They couldn't make the safeties respect the ability to go deep. So that's my issue. That if you take Ayuk out of this offense, the offense is going to be able to be defended differently. If you take Debo out of this offense, it doesn't really change a whole lot about what the defense is doing.
I think that Debo is harder to replace than Brandon Ayuk because he's so versatile the way his skill set is. But I think
one of one.
Yeah, but I think Ayuk is the better wide receiver. I do expect a big Debo game this week against Seattle. He averages almost 100 yards per game against the Seahawks in his career in 5 games. I think he's going to put up another big game this week. I think we're going to see kind of playoff angry Debo down the stretch here.
See, will Debo go off? He certainly could. But if I'm Seattle, my strategy going into this game is we're going to take away Debo. We're just going to make sure he can't get the ball, and we're going to come after Purdy so that he doesn't have the time to go deep to Ayuk.
Good luck.
And see if he can find another option. Now, what that does is that opens you up to, if he can get it to Ayuk deep, it's probably a long touchdown, right? Because you're going to be taking away the safety help in order to stop Debo. You're going to be having a safety come down to basically take away Ayuk, or not Ayuk, Debo being able to go across the middle on a short slant, which we saw him turn into a touchdown last week. And you're going to also have a linebacker playing underneath, so you can't just dump it off to him in the wide receiver game. You're going to bring the attention down to stop Debo. But what that does is it opens up the deep ball. And in order to try to thwart that, I mean, Seattle doesn't have a good option. I'm not saying they're going to succeed, but that's the option I would take at this point. You tried to match up honestly last time, and you got your butts beat. So this time, I'm going to take away Debo, and I'm going to try to get to the quarterback before they can hit Ayuk deeper. That's the only strategy I see they have that might find success, because if the Niners don't block it well enough, it might actually succeed.
Here's the problem with this. As someone pointed out on Twitter earlier this week at Takes by Levin, Brock Purdy can beat a blitz. Like, good luck trying to get to Brock Purdy. He was blitzed 10 times against the Eagles. He was 10 for 10 with not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. If you blitz Brock Purdy, he will see it before the snap, and he will figure it out. And if he doesn't see it before the snap, he's elusive enough to give himself just that little bit of extra time that he needs to make the completion. So if you're telling me that's Seattle's plan, I say bring it on.
Right. Like I said, they're probably not going to succeed, but they don't have many options that even have a path to success. Seattle is not a good defense. They don't have good matchups. I would argue the 49ers are uniquely built to be able to beat that type of defense. So the only way I can see them finding some success is to basically sell out and open yourselves up to the possibility that if Purdy's able to have time or double moves are happening, you're going to give up long touchdowns. You're basically desperate, and you're throwing the kitchen sink, and you're just praying that they don't have the answer in a double move, or that they manage to block everybody for 3 to 4 seconds to allow Purdy to get that deep ball, right? Because you can cheat the second safety over to Ayuk, but what it does is it opens it up to where if he comes all the way across the field, suddenly he's going to be by himself for a long touchdown. Things like that. Like, they can do stuff to make it to where, right, you might get a 70-yard touchdown on this, but in order to get that 70-yard touchdown, you're going to need 3 seconds of time, and we're trying to take that away by blitzing you.
What makes the 49ers so difficult to beat right now is that they are never compromised, right? Like you were saying, a team can go in and say, hey, we're going to gear up to stop player X. But as a result of that, we're going to be more vulnerable in this area. With the 49ers, the area you're vulnerable in is the area they have an all-pro ready to catch the ball and just take your soul. And on defense for the 49ers, we thought it was going to be, well, we're going to rush the passer with 4, and we might be a little more vulnerable in the secondary if we don't get home. But now, Levin, the way the secondary is playing, the 49ers are never vulnerable. They can rush you. They can get home with the blitz. They can get home with 4. And the secondary is playing so great right now, as we saw on Sunday, they're getting coverage sacks for the defensive line.
The secondary has improved dramatically. Probably the biggest single unit improvement since the bye week is the secondary. And that did not just so happen to coincide with Isaiah Oliver not being on the field. When they took him off the field, suddenly there wasn't an easy, oh, here's 5 to 10 yards I can take and complete at a 95% clip or whatever it was with Isaiah Oliver giving up receptions. Like that's what it was. Can Ambry Thomas be beat? Yes. Has he played really, really well in the last couple of weeks? Yes. Do I think that's going to be the new norm for him all the time? No. I think that there will be some fallback to him. Is he good enough to not get toasted in the first 2 seconds? Yes. Is that enough? A large majority of the time for the 49ers? Yes. And that was the problem with Isaiah Oliver.
Are you going to keep asking questions and then answering them?
Yes.
I do agree that
Isaiah Oliver played off coverage and then would also fall behind the wide receiver. So he would get beat instantly. And in 2 to 3 seconds, he would be behind the receiver and get beat even worse. So the offense always had an option. Hey, we can snap the ball and throw it to the Isaiah Oliver guy, or we can wait 2 to 3 seconds to get a longer completion.
Rob D says the secondary had holes that Hurts missed. They weren't locked down. I did watch some of the Jalen Hurts breakdown that JT O'Sullivan did. And on the first play of the game, Jair Brown gets absolutely cooked by the Eagles tight end. And he is open deep down the field, and Jalen Hurts missed him. But that happens every game. There are always coverage breakdowns every game. With the 49ers, the cool thing is when they do happen, Brock Purdy has not missed those throws, which has been great. And on defense, when they happen for the 49ers, other teams haven't been able to take advantage. But on the whole, I would say in that Eagles game, the secondary was fantastic.
I mean, that's the weakness to Hurts' game is his ability to read the defense quickly. That's still his weakness. He is almost the polar opposite of Brock Purdy in terms of strengths and weaknesses, in my opinion. You know, Hurts excels at he's an athletic freak with a rifle of an arm, and he's great at ad-libbing, which we saw that in the game. He constantly wanted to ad-lib because that's where he excels. Whereas Purdy is somebody that excels in pre-snap recognition and quickly reading the defense post-snap and figuring out what the coverage is and getting through his progressions. So that's why against Hurts, the key is keep your contained so he can't get out of the pocket and ad-lib. And if you do that, he will probably not do well because he's not capable of diagnosing a defense all that well. And that was his weakness going back to college.
So focusing on this week as we wrap up, do you have a score prediction?
49ers win easily. Have I put points on it? No. Do I think the 49ers get 30 plus? I do. Do I think Seattle struggles to get to 20? I do. I could see Seattle maybe getting over 20 because they get a late touchdown, something like that. But I don't think it's going to be close. I think it'll probably be close for the first quarter and a half. The Niners will score prior to the half, and that's kind of the last time you worry about it.
I know that I was very hesitant going into the Eagles game. I know that I picked the Eagles to win. But after the performance I saw on Sunday, as long as everybody's healthy, I'm picking the Niners to win every game the rest of the regular season. I have to. I mean, they have shown that they are not just winning games. They are crushing teams. So I'm picking Niners, I'll say 31-20. If Seattle, I agree. I think they might get a late score that gives them sort of an artificial boost when it comes to the final numbers, much like the Eagles did on Sunday. I think that the Niners are rolling. They are going to smash people. They have something to play for. We mentioned if the Niners win and the Vikings and the Packers, either one of those teams loses, the Niners clinch a playoff spot. So they have that carrot out in front of them. I think they're going to whoop them. And that would be, by the way, 11 straight wins against the NFC West and 5 straight against the Seahawks.
Yeah, so the Niners have 2 things to really play for this week. One is they can clinch a playoff spot, like you said, if the Vikings or the Packers lose and the Niners win. 2, as I said earlier in the show, they will all but lock up the NFC West and a home playoff game if they win and the Rams lose to the Ravens. So they have 2 things going for them. They can get a 4-game lead with 4 games to go in the division, and they can actually clinch at a minimum a playoff spot as a wild card if one of 2 other teams lose. So they got reasons to play this game. Now, if they win this game and they lock up playoffs and have the NFC West all but locked up, do they have a reason to play the following week? That's the big question.
We don't know. They do want that number 1 seed, though. We know it's important to them, so we will see. My last question, are you going to join for the instant reaction show on Sunday?
Of course. I never miss it. Yes, I will be there this week. I will be traveling home during halftime.
Oh, perfect time to travel. Hope all of you join us on the instant reaction show. We always do one immediately after the game here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're new, hit that little bell. You'll get notified every time we go live, which we are live every single weekday.
Hey, Rob, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing my Tecmo Bowl Jerry Rice shirt that Homage just sent me. It is fantastic.
From who?
From Homage.
See, that's how sponsorship works. That's how you sell stuff, Rob.
Okay. If you want it or you want to see their entire 49ers collection, just click the link in the description of this episode. It'll take you right there. They have this is the Jerry Rice Tecmo Bowl. They've got one for every team. They've got a whole bunch of awesome, comfortable stuff. So go check out Homage and support.
And hopefully a new one in the works, especially for me to get for you.
We will. We may have some big announcements here on the Gold Standard Network in the near future. That's all I'll say. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody. Thank you for watching. All your comments from everybody. Thank you to all our YouTube channel members. Go Niners, and we'll talk to you soon.